Hi everybody, welcome to Caketastic Cakes. It's Jen and I'm going to show you today how to make a Gabby's Dollhouse CatRat cake. And if you see me using any tools or supplies that you can use yourself, if you check the link in the description below, it should be able to help you out. Okay, now to start my cake, I am going to cover a cake with green fondant. I rolled it out nice and thin, laid it over my cake, and now I'm just smoothing down the sides and cutting off any of the extra that sticks off the bottom. My bottom is pretty rough and ugly, I'm going to admit. It's not the cleanest job I've ever done. So I'm taking some orange fondant here and cutting a nice long stripe out of it. And I'm going to make it into kind of a belt to go around the bottom of my cake, or a border to go around the bottom of my cake. That way it'll hide the uglies and it will give it some more color and make it just a nicer cake all around. So I use my tool, cut a nice long strip, carefully wrap it around the bottom. And when I get it all in place, you can see it hides most of the uglies. And I'm using my fondant paddle just to smooth it out. Okay. Now to decorate the cake, I'm going to start by putting some colorful paw prints on it. I am going to be honest here, I don't watch the show, Gabby's Dollhouse. My kids are too big. I'm not exactly completely down with the characters and their little idiosyncrasies, so I'm kind of winging it with this guy. I am putting just some big colorful circles, as you can see. And then I'm adding 3 small little circles on the top to make little cat paw prints, making it colorful, making it very kitty-ish. And now I'm going to add some leaves. I do know that CatRat lives underground or something, and because he pops out of the hole in the garden, kind of like a tunneling rat, I guess. I don't really know his jam again, so don't hold me to this, but I decided to put him basically in a garden. So I have a bunch of different leaf shapes that I had from a flower set, and I'm cutting out just the different shapes in some green gum paste. I'm using gum paste now because, again, I want to have these set and harden and hold their shape, whereas fondant just covers the cake. So anyway, I'm using some green gum paste here, made a bunch of different stamps. I made some darker green, again, made some more stamps out of it. I'm using my knife blade to add some veins to the leaves. I just put one down the center, and then just kind of chop, 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 chop the sides, depending on, which leaf it is. Some of them get more chops, some of them get less. Whatever, just make them look interesting. Now, I'm going to put some leaves around the front of the cake, just a little bit though, not too high either. They're kind of going sideways because I didn't want to completely block it, but I want to make CatRat kind of feel encapsulated by the plants. So I'm just using a little bit of water to make them stick to the sides of the cake. And that's it, just made like a little semicircle there. Now I want to show you how I did the background leaves here on the cake. I'm taking a towel, I rolled up the 2 sides, I put my 6-inch pan, because that's the size of the cake there, on the side so it doesn't roll away. I put a paper towel over it, and now I'm taking the leaves that I made and I'm laying them face down on the paper towel, and I'm just sticking them together using a little bit of water. Now I let them sit and dry, and when it's all done, ta-da! It's like I made like a fairy crown or something. And I'm going to add a couple little pieces of spaghetti, dried spaghetti in the back to make sure it doesn't fall off because it wasn't completely dry. And now we're going to move on to CatRat. Okay, to begin with our CatRat, I'm going to start with his head. And just like most of the cats on Gabby's Dollhouse, he has an enormous head. So I'm starting with some light blue gum paste. And I have started kind of with a circle, but now I've pinched at the bottom, kind of flared out at the bottom, and sloped a little bit inward. You see how it's shaped there? I don't know what it would be shaped like, but you can see the 2 little flares out to the sides at the bottom and how it tapers up toward the top. That's basically the overall shape that we're going to keep working with this guy. I'm making his eyes now, his eye sockets. I'm using the small part of my ball tool there to make a line across and then make a swoop down below it. So we're doing like a half a circle for his eyes because he always has kind of that, I don't know, that shady look going on about him that you don't necessarily trust 100%. I'm going to add his stripes now. I took some purple gum paste, rolled it really, 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 really thin, and as you see, I made a diamond for the top of his head. So the part that you see when you look at the front of him is just going to be the triangle that comes down, but it does actually turn into a diamond and then go into the back of his head. For the sides of his face, for the stripes that come around the sides by his cheeks, I made 2, I don't even know what these shapes would be. long shapes that are pointed on each end and fatter in the center. And I am just very gently and carefully wrapping it around his head and just folding it over in the back. I don't watch the show. My kids are too big, so I don't actually know what he looks like from behind on his head. So, if this is wrong, just add whatever spots or stripes or whatever he's got going on appropriately. And then yours will be better than mine. See? No problems. I'm doing his ears now. I'm using the same dark purple gum paste. I cut two very tall triangles because his ears are very thin and tall. They're not quite as round or wide as some of the other cats we've done before. And I've hollowed out the center there using my veining tool to make a couple little triangles. You see what I'm doing right there? Just press down in the center. And then I'm going to take some hot pink. There's my nephew. I'm babysitting today. So he ended up in my footage a little bit that I couldn't quite, edit around him. So we'll say hi to my nephew. Hi, nephew. Okay, so I've got the pink gum paste that I am putting into the center of each ear. I just rolled it into kind of like a little point and just placed it in with a little bit of water, press it into shape. Trim off any extra that you need to, and then when you place the ears, you're going to add a little bit of water. Stick them on either side of the stripe on top of his head, and make sure they're kind of pretty high on top of his head. They don't come out to the sides too much either, so just be careful of placement. Alright, now that I've got that going on, I put a piece of white gum paste into the eye socket that I made, and I'm using the big ball and the small ball on my tool there just to smooth it out, round it out, kind of press it in, and make sure you keep that nice flat line across that top. Make sure you keep your half circle shape going. Now I'm going to add the white patch that's on his face. I've seen different pictures of him. Sometimes it looks white to me. Other times it looks very, very, very light blue. So, act accordingly. Use whatever color you think is best. But I started with a circle, and I'm using a smaller circle to cut two little nips out of each side of the circles. And then I cut the top off with my X-Acto knife there, basically replicating the shape of his head again. And that way it will fit between his eyes and go down and around his mouth, kind of like his little fuzzy muzzle. And that little pink bean you see me working with there, that really little small piece of pink, I'm cutting it into a very loose triangle. That's going to become his nose, as you see, because I just put it on his face for his nose. And now I'm going to start filling in his eyes. I took black, rolled it out really thin. This is all gum paste still. Cut it in half, so I've got two little half circles. And I'm just putting them inside of the white of his eye sockets. There is white that shows all around the black, so it's not filling in his eye all the way, so be careful of that because he does have a lot of black showing, white showing around his eye. I'm going to add a little ball of white to each eye for a little highlight. I'm just putting a little bit of water on, then using my paintbrush handle actually to put it into place. And now I'm adding a dark blue, kind of just like a little bean. It's skinny on each end, and I'm just following the bottom curve of his eye a little bit and just kind of pressing it in because his eyes do have color, but they're so dark it really doesn't show very well. This is black gum paste. I rolled it really long and thin just between my fingers, between my hands, and to make his eyebrows. And when you put them on, make sure you cut the eyebrows so that you have that long skinny tapered end, and then it cuts off blunt in the center or toward the front, the other end of the eyebrow, because his eyebrows are very, very sculpted. They're very flat and then thick, and then they go very long and thin. So just be careful of that. And I have one going arched and one a little cocked because he's kind of got attitude. All right, this blue piece you see me working on here, I just put it on a lollipop stick, is going to be his body. He has, again, a tiny body compared to his head, so make sure you give him a tiny body compared to his head, which might also mean you'd have to give the head time to set and the body time to set before you join them together. So, keep that in mind. Anything really big you put on top of anything small could crush it. So make sure you have plenty of time for everything to dry to support that kind of weight. I added, as you saw there, as I talked through it, a little white belly patch. It was just white gum paste that I had shaped like a big old Tic Tac that I flattened out and rolled long. Stuck in place. These are pieces of blue gum paste, the same as his body. That's going to become his legs. So I'm going to make his little white paws first. I just took a ball of white gum paste, used my knife blade to make 2 indentations so he has 3 toes. Use a little bit of water to connect it to the bottom of the leg. And the other end of the leg, you see, I cut it off at an angle. So now it's going to kind of lay into the body. It's going to press up against it, but it's going to taper and gradually just go into the body. So once again, there's the 2 toes. Going to connect it to the foot, or excuse me, that is the foot. Going to connect it to the leg. I cut the wedge off at an angle where the thigh is, so now it'll just kind of blend into the body better where they're connected. And it all comes together like so. Yes, there we go. Just like that. So easy. Actually, he's really not bad to make. He really isn't. There's not a lot going on with him. I'm going to make his arms next. Exactly the same thing. I'm going to roll out a piece of gum paste really long and kind of thin. Cut it off at each end. Taper the one end, as you saw. That's going to go up against the body, or into the shoulder right there. And I'm going to have his arms and his paws coming into the front of his body because he kind of sits like Gollum, honestly. Like a little creepy old hunched over creature with his little paws rubbing together sinisterly, you know, just that kind of an approach. So that's what I'm trying to emulate here. So again, the other side's the same thing. I tapered the shoulder, attached it, bend it at the elbows, and I'm making 2 little white balls with, again, the 2 pressure lines in order to make 3 toes and put his little paws together like he does. He's just a, yeah, kind of shady little character. This long piece, just like the arms and legs, is going to be his tail. Again, cut it at an angle so it'll go up against his bottom nice and smooth without any issues. I wanted his tail to show because he really, again, doesn't have a lot going on. He has a few stripes you see on his head, and then really it's just his tail. I'm going to add a couple stripes to his back because at one point I did see him turn around and he had some back stripes, so there you go there. But this long skinny piece of purple is going to be all about the tail. So I rolled it, again, very thin as I could get it, really. I'm going to lay it over the tail. I put a little brush of water over the tail first to make it stick. And then I'm going to trim off any extra. And see, I learned after that first stripe that I should cut on the outside where it's easier to manipulate. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just going to keep laying some stripes over his tail, wrap it around, tuck it under, trim off the extra, you know, make sure it's all nice and tucked. And there's his stripy tail. And for the end of his tail, he has like a purple cap on it. So I just made a purple circle and just wrapped it over the edge. Just capped the end of his tail just like that. And there you go. See, his body's there. One last little thing I'm going to do, I'm going to add his mouth. I'm using a food coloring marker to very carefully draw his thin, long smile that he has. Stick it onto his lollipop stick there very carefully. There you go. Cat rat. Now take our sassy little cat rat and stick him in the middle of your cake. I have some of these rock candies. They're little chocolates that have kind of like an M&M shell on the outside, but they look like rocks. And they're delicious, and I love them. But anyway, I decided to put some around him like he just popped out of his hole. And I'm going to add the quintessential, the ubiquitous, the ever-present, and very versatile handful of colorful flowers that I always have. I always have a bunch of these ready to go. So I put some pretty colorful flowers here and there to jazz up my garden. And there you go. You got Gabby's Dollhouse CatRat Cake. So I hope you found this video helpful. Please like and subscribe because it really does help me out. Check out my many other videos. I got a whole bunch of the other cats from Gabby's Dollhouse available. And as always, thank you for watching Caketastic Cakes.